All right, we are now live. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special guest today at the Superlative Podcast. My name is Edward Bushi. We have one guest every episode. No edits, no post production, just a sharp live conversation about what it really takes to reach higher levels and what comes next. So let's get into it. I want to say a big hello to Andrew McLuhan, the founder of the McLuhan Institute. He actually spent his 20s as a poet and punk rocker, completely uninterested in the legacy of his grandfather, Marshall, and his father, Eric. But a trip to Poland with his dad in his early 30s finally made it all click. So, Andrew, uh, before we start and we get to know you more, like, tell us about yourself and in two sentences and what you're doing at the McLuhan Institute.
Sure. Thanks, Edward. Hello to you. Hello to everybody. Um, 2 cents about me. Well, you already said I come from a poetry and punk rock background, not from an academic background. Um, and yeah, I got interested in my family's work later in life, which is, around studying the effects of technology on people and
Mm,
culture. And that led me to forming the McLuhan Institute, mainly because it didn't exist. So it's a it's a different sort of startup, but a startup nonetheless.
yeah. I have to say, like, uh, what we're going to get into today is going to be very fascinating intellectually. It applies to how startups work and how they progress. If you look at all of technology and how it works, really excited to get into that. Um, but before that, could we get a little backstory? What was like life like when before things got serious for you, and like how did that like change?
Sure. Well, immediately before jumping into this head first, I was running a small business doing furniture upholstery. I ran a shop called The Cover Up, where I took people's, grandfathers or aunts' old chair and took it apart and put it back together again. I had somebody deliver me a chair in pieces in a bucket one time and ask me to put it back together. um, and that was interesting. It's always been fascinating to me to see what's underneath things.
Hmm.
And the interesting thing, you probably most people probably don't think about it, but um, once you start peeling apart the layers of a chair, like
Hmm.
you find things. People lose things inside chairs, and of course, there's lots
Like
of like,
pennies and
yeah,
coins. Yeah.
pennies, coins, breadcrumbs, lots of crumbs, and gross stuff and dead bugs, but also interesting things that make you wonder. I found a flash drive once, and old rings, old coins, like interesting things. But more than that, you find traces of who's been there before,
Hmm.
particularly when it's an old piece of furniture that's been upholstered and reupholstered. You find traces of the people who've done the work before, and sometimes they will have signed the work, the person who built the chair. And I always had fun leaving something for the next person. So I would write poetry inside chairs, and certainly sign my name and stuff like that. But this kind of obsession with things hidden uh, is a through line. I always pass by a place and wonder what's behind that door,
Hmm.
and it's always delightful to find, to be surprised, to go into a building that looks abandoned and find it's actually a movie studio,
Yeah.
or an old Masonic meeting hall, or something like this. It's a reminder that there's more than meets the eye. And I've found that carries over as well, and served me well in this kind of work as well, where certainly when it comes to technology and what it does to us, there's a lot more than meets the eye.
Yeah, you only see the front or current facade of a thing or an object, right? And yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So you described yourself as a poet and a punk rocker before any of this. Does that background, the instinct toward language and culture and noise, also show up in how you think about like what the work you do now?
It does. Even the punk rock side of things, believe it or not. At least that's kind of the approach I bring to things. Punk rock is well, I suppose it's different depending on who you ask, but
Mm,
for me, it's counterculture.
counterculture. Yeah.
So it's setting yourself up, if not exactly in opposition, at least in contrast to prevailing things.
Mm,
That maps one to one onto media studies, where most people are interested in the uses of technologies. And media studies is about how the technologies use us, aside from the way we use them,
mm,
what the short and long range effects are on who we are, individually and culturally. Um, the poetry part, well, it works at least in my family's approach. My grandfather Marshall was, while he wasn't necessarily a poet,
mm.
he was a literary critic and loved and studied poetry. And poetry is about experimentation, and expression and experience, different ways of approaching things and seeing things and relating them. And that certainly characterizes my grandfather and father's work. Also, a sense of, with that sense of experimentation, a sense of play,
Mm.
um, and lightheartedness is very important, because uh, my grandfather also characterized his work as detective work. You know, um, he traced it back to Edgar Allan Poe, who invented the modern detective story.
Mm.
And in the modern detective story, you tend to begin um, with the scene of the crime. Something has happened. There's a dead body. There's been a
At the end
theft,
of it, yeah.
right? And then the rest of the story is discovering clues and pieces, and putting them together to discover the cause. But a very important part in that process is to not jump to conclusions, but to assemble evidence first. Uh, and that's very much our family's approach to technology, is
Yeah.
to try and make as few assumptions as possible and not to reach conclusions before you have all the evidence.
Yeah, that is really fascinating to describe things like working backwards and the crime scene analogy.
Uh-huh.
The from our onboarding call, right? Um, you, you you mentioned how a trip to like Poland lit up your whole mind to like how this all clicked, right? And how you should think about like looking at the past, assembling evidence, being curious. Like, how did that? Do you mind walking us through that, like that journey?
Not at all. It's something I think about, and uh, our lives are not, um, that we live them linearly, along the line, and I think, well, it's obvious to say it, but we mature, you
Mm,
know, and there are things, we might be exposed to things earlier in life that don't make any sense, or that we don't have the maturity to evaluate on their terms, or at least the way that we experience things changes. Things take a different meaning when you're a teenager than when you're 30 years old and a parent. you
mm,
know it's a very different perspective. There's a mental and emotional maturity, maybe even spiritual maturity, that comes into play. And this is actually why it's important to, I found, in reading and in studying, um, to revisit things, because I forget who said you can't step in the same river twice. But books are like this too. You know,
Mm.
I don't think you can read the same book twice. It's not that the ideas have changed, but you have, and you've come across a lot of things along the way that change your experience and the significance of things. And so this goes to what happened to me in Poland, which was, uh, my father was a diabetic, and he could get into trouble with his health, and he needed somebody around who knew what to do if he had a low blood sugar episode. And my mother used to travel with him, and if it was Spain or France or the Azores or whatever, she's happy to go.
Mm.
Wasn't so much interested in Poland, but so I got asked, and for me, it was a free trip to Europe, and
Mm.
obviously, sure. Um, and yeah, it's, as you mentioned, um, I tried reading my family's work as a kid, as a teenager, when I started to understand that it was a big deal, and I couldn't see what the big deal was about. And then I tried again in my 20s, and it just didn't make any sense to me, really.
Mm.
So obviously, that wasn't very interesting. But um, whatever it was, those factors of emotional, mental, spiritual, otherwise maturity, I think, finally caught up with the material, and listening to my dad give his talk, it made sense to me for the first time.
Yeah.
I kind of got what he said. It's like, oh shoot, yeah, right. It's the environment that technologies create and recreate that shape us. Just like a natural environment. You pour pollutants into one part of the pond, it affects the whole pond.
It's
Um,
different forever, or until
it's
the
diff-
yeah.
it's different forever, and it's also a different notion of causality. You
Mm.
know, um, the way we normally think about causality in the West is what we think of as cause and effect. This happens, then that happens. But there's another kind of causality, which is known as formal cause, which is more about simultaneous things and the environment as a cause, rather than precipitating events leading to this, to that, to that. Anyway, that's almost another topic, but yeah, what my dad said made sense to me, and when it made sense, it became interesting and then fascinating, and here I am, 10 plus years later.
No, like thanks for sharing that. And like, I really admire that you that you had that moment, and then you just and you were like, I want to start this institute and continue, your father and your grandfather's work, and then apply to some crazy new changes to what we're seeing right now with what like AI and the internet being much more hardened and mature now.
Mm.
Um, one of the things I wanted to like explore with you today was something really interesting, right? You talked about the Tetrad, right? This is it seems like a framework to understand changes in, I guess, culture and also technology and media.
Mhm.
Uh, and this would be a great foundation for like what we could talk later. But do you mind getting into what the Tetrad is?
Sure. Um, I'll try to be brief about it. It's a bit of a long story. Um, my my grandfather wrote this book, Understanding Media, it published in 1964, which was the culmination of actually several years of work in in looking at the nature of technology and culture, and the reciprocal relationship between the two things. How, as John Culkin said, we shape our tools and thereafter they shape us. Just getting to the bottom of that. The result being this book, Understanding Media. Uh, about 10 years later, he and my father, my dad, Eric, who was working with him by then from the mid 60s on, the, Marsha was looking at doing a 10th anniversary edition of Understanding Media. And he and my father decided to try and answer this question that we have laws of gravity and laws of physics and thermodynamics. Are there laws of media? Are
Mm.
there constants in technology? All technologies do all kinds of things, but is there anything that all technologies do that they have in common?
Mm.
Um, which is an interesting question, I think. And they ended up finding four things. They discovered that all technologies are an extension or an amplification of some part of ourselves, hardware or software, our bodies or our senses or our minds or whatever. Anytime we come up with a technology, it's to do something we already do it faster, more efficiently, etc. Right? So any technology extends a part of us, and understanding what part of us is extended tells us a lot about this thing that we've created. Um, at the same time, when you bring a new technology into the mix of things, there's an existing order already, and bringing something new into it changes that order, and it tends to reverse the roles of something that was already dominant, right? So, the internet displaced television, for one thing, and many other things, including, retail shopping, right?
Mm. Yeah.
So the word for that is obsolescence, right? It makes it obsolete. And this is actually a really important point. 'Cause a lot of people will think that means, killing, right? Death. But it's
Mm.
not necessarily the case. It's just a change in the order. And that's an important thing to notice. So you have enhancement or amplification and obsolescence. Um, Also, at the same time, if you take any form and you push it to an extreme, to the limits of what it does, it changes its nature.
Mm.
So if you build a highway to enhance the speed of traffic and you put too many cars on it at the same time, you get a standstill, you get a traffic jam, right? Or if if you go out for drinks and you have one or two, you're doing fine, and if you have 10, it's a different story.
Yeah.
So the idea of uh, a tipping point and a reversal following it is a constant in technology. And lastly, the thing that they found was that every new way of doing things brings back an old way of doing things in a new form. And this is a difficult one, actually. Probably the most challenging for me, because for the others, I mean, I can think about the highway as enhancing my ability to get from one place to another on my own timetable, etc. I can imagine that it takes over from, you know, the horse and carriage, or from the train or the bus. And I can even see that if I push it far enough and too many of us are on it at the same time, we get a traffic jam.
Yeah.
But what does the highway bring back from the past in a new form? And to know this, you have to go beyond your imagination. You have to actually know what's back there to be brought back. Imagination only brings you so far. So that's what makes it difficult. And for that one, actually, it was quite a while later that I realized. And again, as somebody who loves poetry and magic, really, we had a golden retriever,
Yeah.
this dog, uh, and I was taking him for a walk out behind the barn, and we cross over this creek, and it's winter.
Yeah.
And I realized that, in the new world here, before we had roads, the way we got around was rivers, and highways.
Oh.
Highways are kind of river traffic, with concrete.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It's an artificial river. It's just like you just this thing in the middle of the of nature that people just go into and connect into and then go.
right?
That's really, yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah.
really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it is kind of, people don't like this because people say, well, it's not science. And it's
Mm.
like, okay, but it maybe it's an older method of science or a different method of science. And again, coming back to causality, maybe it's not the scientific method, but that's not to say that it's not a way of knowing.
Yeah.
And if it's useful, I think it's valid.
That's a really thought-provoking way of thinking about it. Yes, you're right that the river is not technically like a highway,
Yeah,
but in the abstract,
theoretically
it
it
is.
is.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
And it resonates. And the thing about the tetrad, the laws of media, as they're
yeah.
called, is that they're they're forecastable. The
Interesting.
thing is
Yeah.
that it doesn't tell you everything about any technology, but it gives you four places to start that are going to be there when you want to look at what a technology is or what it could do. So particularly in the startup world,
Mm,
and I think frankly on the investing side of things, if you want to imagine what the long-term effects, and effects can be monetary or social,
mm,
might be, well, you've got four places to start, and once you start, things branch off and go in all sorts of directions. But it's been interesting that this this tool, which has been around for several decades now, is I'm getting a lot of people interested in it. Not that I am, but I'm finding a lot of people interested. I wrote about this for the Andreessen Horowitz newsletter a
wow.
month or two ago, A16ZZ.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it to me indicates that people are ready to think about technology in a new way.
Yeah. Yeah. If just a rough way, if this is going to be for all the startup listeners out there that, like, I know that we are supposed to promote startups or what we're building. Like, this is the Uber of that. This is the Airbnb of I guess boats or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But like, if you really think abstractly, apply this kind of thinking, and if we were trying to sell highways, right? Like we could say it's the river, but for cars, right?
And
That
the interesting thing about that is that this is actually another constant about technology, is that
yeah.
we always use the new tool to do the old job.
Mm,
And eventually we discover that actually it's better at doing this other thing.
yeah. Yeah.
So whenever you're trying to sell Uber as it's, or whatever you're doing as
Yeah.
it's the Uber of that, this
Yeah.
is what you're doing. And you're actually trapping yourself in this kind of backward thinking rather than
Uh,
in forward thinking. Of course, what you're trying to do is sell the thing, and you have to sell things on terms that people can relate to. But for your internal purposes, I would suggest you not think about it that way, or you're
mm,
always going to be looking backward and never
yeah.
looking to potential.
Yeah, it's limiting. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's very provoking. That's something like we should like learn in startup school. So, um, you you gave me a chain on our call that I haven't been able to think about. Right, the highway, just like you talked about now, reverses when you push it too far with like traffic. It becomes like slow. Right, the internet made Amazon possible, which made storefronts obsolete, and now agents might make Amazon obsolete the same way the internet made storefronts obsolete. Was
Uh-huh.
that chain deliberate, or like, uh, did we arrive that moment? Yeah.
Well, I don't know about deliberate, but it has a logic to it.
Mm.
You can see if you want to think about it in terms of a chain of causality, you can see
Oh,
it.
yeah.
But again, like even thinking about a chain, kind of limits you to thinking in a certain type of way, right?
Yeah, you're talking about the lake earlier, where you
Absolutely.
could add chemicals to it and it changes, but there's other things that happen at the same time. It's not linear, like you said.
No, it's not, and it's also very, very difficult to discover that in the moment. These kind of things become clear later on, typically. But it does very much help if you have an environmental perspective going in, right? Understanding that there's the difficult thing about environments is that they're both complex and dynamic, right? So complexity is just a function of volume of data, uh, which, you know, we have a solution for that now in agents, because of course, you know, agents don't have the limits of attention and perception that humans do, which I think is actually their very big strength and utility. But the dynamicism is another thing. Complex is one thing, dynamic is another. Dynamic just means that um, things are interwoven and connected and changing. And that's important. It's like any picture is only a frozen moment in time, which we've now moved on from. So this is one of our big problems with technology, frankly, is that technology moves at the speed of light, and we don't. So in terms of regulation, this is the big problem with regulation, because regulation moves at the speed of paper and bureaucracy. So by the time any government has gotten around to trying to regulate anything, it's well past the point of being very effective. You know, the difficulty is they're always chasing the last technology. My grandfather said that the general's always supremely equipped to fight the previous war. You know, so but what do you do about that? Well, I think what you do is you take the kind, obviously I would say this, but you take the kind of approach that my grandfather and father did, which is that you stop thinking about technology and think about technologies. You know, think about them as categories, and in a broader sense. And I start there rather than trying to, you know, regulating social media now is kind of ridiculous. It's like we've moved on.
Yeah, it's so many iterations. There's so many, and it's still changing. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's, you know, out in the country here, we say it's like trying to close the barn door after the horses have escaped.
That's a good analogy. Yeah. So I want to you talk about you were talking about a paper that you wrote for A16Z. Like, could you talk, like, you know, like, talk about that? Like,
sure.
This is really cool.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty neat. It was an honor to be asked. You know, my mission here with the McLuhan Institute is to preserve what I've been left, what we've been left, frankly. I don't see it as just myself. I see it as a global heritage, honestly, and to make it accessible, because this is the problems with technology and individuals and culture are global. They're not. They're everybody's problem. They don't belong in academia. They don't belong in theory or media studies or communication. They belong in the world. And so I'm always trying to build bridges from here to different communities. I've been doing a lot of work in tech because this is where everything, you know, a lot of our problems and solutions begin in technology these days. So the more I feel, the more we can equip technologists, the people are building things, the more we can equip them with tools for thinking about the downstream effects of the things they build, the better off we all are. Because imagine anticipating a problem before it happens and, you know, doing something about it before it becomes a problem. Imagine that. So I was asked to write for the A16Z newsletter, and we went back and forth a little bit on topics, and landed on laws of media. So I wrote this piece called "Laws of Bracket New Media," And it came out, was it end of December or January, one of the two, with Alex Danko. Danko is a Toronto-based editor at large, I think, for the Andreessen Horowitz newsletter, new media team. Really interesting guy. He gave a fascinating talk about magic words. Shared it to the Toronto Society and the Viaduct series.
That is
Really
something to
great
look
stuff.
into. Yeah.
Oh, it absolutely. Um, uh, they do incredible work. They have a lecture coming up, which highly recommend checking it out. The Viaduct series,
The
Toronto
Viaduct series.
Society. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out to them. So yeah, so I wrote this piece, and it's really what I already just explained to you about laws of media and trying to put them in terms that the general tech person or VC or whatever,
Hmm.
the thing might understand. The thing that is wild to me about VC
Yeah.
is that it's a numbers game.
Mm.
They throw all this money like darts at a board, knowing that 99% won't hit and that 1 out of 100 will, and they're willing to throw away 99% of their darts for the
Yeah.
one that comes back as a unicorn with the hockey stick growth and all the rest of it. And to me, that's crazy.
Yeah.
uh, I mean, it's justifiable on paper, but imagine if you could improve that by even a percentage point,
Mm.
right? Just by understanding some basic, what I think of as basic things about how technology works. That gives you a framework for actually evaluating technologies and their potential
Mm.
impact.
Yeah.
And so to me, this is like, I'm not surprised it's catching on.
Yeah.
And uh, yeah.
I would add to that because I had a chat with a VC yesterday, and how they describe themselves as a fund of funds. They don't invest directly in the companies. They have they give money to VC founders, so founders who just recently
Okay.
left their companies, and
Uh-huh.
then they become curators,
Mm,
right, for startups to invest in. And this is, and if they go well, then the big fund comes in.
yeah,
But like the framework that you're talking about would be very well suited and useful for the curator VCs, the first line of folks coming in, because
absolutely.
yeah, it's on them to make a good portfolio so that they can run another fund.
Well, and
Yeah.
it's not just about evaluating the potential of a technology,
Yeah.
but from my experience in this world, it's primarily about people.
Mm,
You know,
interesting.
people invest in people and in capabilities and potential of people. And it's like, this thing you're working on might not be great, but I know you're going to do something, so I'm going to invest in you. And that's, from what I understand, a lot of VC is really just HR,
Yeah.
and finding the right people. And
Mm,
you know what?
perfect way of saying it. Yeah.
What you want is, you want people who think deeply about technology, and that indicates their potential for innovation. I think innovating thinking
Mm,
leads to innovating work.
mm,
So uh, if you run into somebody who knows about laws of media and McLuhan and Tetrads, that's a good indication, I think.
mm,
And even if they don't, if you pass the ideas by them and see what they do with it and whether they can even grasp the concept, again, I think that's a good filter. So
yeah.
yeah, holler at me if you want to learn about tetrads. This
No,
is
no,
obviously what I love
no.
doing.
This is
So
this is a really awesome framework, and just for the so we get a sense of it in so folks can get a sense of the tetrad in action. Like we chatted previously on an onboarding call about agents, and agents will in if we were to use the framework, agents will supersede our friends being our who we go to for taste, right?
mm.
I just want to go into that like with you. Like, do you want to expand on that and or start that off?
Sure. I mean, this is just one area. but quite a long time ago, I realized that AI agents are going to disrupt things like SEO, right? Search engine optimization was directed toward humans.
Mm.
Uh, and when humans aren't doing the searching anymore, SEO as we know it is useless
Mm.
in large part. But SEO and search are all about a process of discovery.
I
And
see.
in terms of retrieval, I think this is one thing that the agent brings back, which is like the word of mouth. Ironically, it's a machine, but like instead of a search engine going to Google and typing something in and filtering through results, you have a recommendation engine, which is algorithmic. If you like this, you might like that, right? Um, and I think it goes beyond uh, the recommendation of a friend.
Mm.
Like how we discover new music is a friend comes to us and says, "Hey, check out this band. Like they're awesome. You'll love it."
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and we know that that kind of recommendation it carries 100 times more weight in terms of purchasing than any advertisement can do, right? So, uh, a lot of companies are building like the most valuable thing is the secondary share,
Hmm.
right? That micro influencing of when somebody discovers something and shares it out to their network, because they become like the influencer behind it, right?
Mm.
And it's a very powerful thing. But the agent, and I think we're very early days on it. They're going to become a lot more successful, and I think people will they'll be more like to what we have thought about as a digital twin. But it when it when your own personal agent comes back to you with something they found, it's as if you found it in the first place, right?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, uh, so you can think about how valuable that might be in terms of impact on a person and how that might influence their decisions. So but all of this is just a result of looking at what this enhances about us, what it amplifies, what part of us is amplified here. But then think about obsolescence, because again, obsolescence, far from meaning death, means an area of great opportunity,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
especially when people think it's an area of death. That means that they leave and you can come in and take advantage because it it may be ultimately a kind of death, but it's often a very, very slow one. So there's much to be made in the meantime.
Mm. Yeah. It could be decades. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah. So I could see that already playing out because like I could see agents that take the form of an influencer, right?
Oh yeah.
That only has like 20 or 50 or 100 people at max, right? But it's really attuned to its or one, yeah. It's
Yeah.
really attuned to the person, one person, right? Or it could be an agent that someone personally sets up on their Claude or OpenAI, right? And then they gave it all the instructions. So it
Yeah.
could be one made, yeah.
And so come into discoverability, this means a different kind of optimization. It's agent optimization, not search engine optimization.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
you're optimizing for discoverability by machine intelligence, not by human discovery. That's a very, very different. I mean, it's related, but it's different. And the
Mm.
thing I think, if you're smart, you'll be thinking about is how to do that effectively, because that's what's
Yeah.
going to win the internet.
Yeah. Have you any thoughts on how agents could, or rather, how technology and sorry, let me like put this another way. how agents relate to finance. Have you had any thoughts on the topics going around where agents are moving and buying things on
Yeah.
behalf of users? Because that's never been done before, at least from what I've seen.
Yeah. Yeah, I've thought about it a bit. I mean, I like to I'm big. I'm an experimenter, an explorer and an experimenter. Actually, I love that. I'm an experimenter. That's
Yeah, it's, coin it.
um, you heard it here first.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think that's very interesting. Just knowing what I know about human uh, awareness, how long it takes to find something, right? To actually discover something worthwhile, that an agent can find almost instantaneously,
Hmm.
right? Certainly can be, uh, like a Google alert, right? Uh, but an agent.
Mm.
So, whereas I might have had a Google alert set for a piece of information, I can set an agent to not only discover that piece of information, but to act on it, right? So, like, if I want to know when something goes on sale, uh, if I had a Google alert to tell me, oh, shoot, this thing went on sale, I'm at work and I have notifications off. By the time I find it 2 hours later, it's gone. Somebody else has
Mm.
it.
Yeah.
But if I have an agent that not only has an alert, but has a budget,
Yeah.
that's a whole other thing. And not an unlimited budget. I'm not giving an agent control of my bank account, but I'm looking for a particular book that I haven't been able to find. The agent's got a $50 gift card or whatever for Abe Books or what have you, because that's my budget for this volume. And it gets posted. My agent finds it. Bam, it picks it up.
Mm.
This sort of thing, I think, it's already being done, but I think it could become very common because it just makes sense. However, it's always a sacrifice,
Yeah.
uh, because anytime we optimize for speed, we sacrifice for depth. There's a proportion there, and they're linked.
Mm.
The faster you go, the shallower it is. So I'm giving my agency away and sacrificing my experience, because yeah, it's great to have the book, but uh, it's the search, right? It's going trolling every. I've been looking for this one record, okay,
Yeah.
and like vinyl, uh, and it's a Duke Ellington record, uh, and it's got this particular track on it that mentions and kind of features my grandfather. Duke Ellington put out this record. It's called like uh, Trans Euro. Oh, now I forget it offhand. But anyway, I've been looking for this record.
Yeah.
Something about it. Afro Eurasian Eclipse. Okay. And every record, whenever I travel, every record store I see, I go into looking for
Oh.
this
Okay, I see where you're
because
going. Yep.
because I've I could buy it on Discogs, but I don't want to spend $300 for it, you know.
Mm.
And also it's the mission, you know.
Mm. Yeah.
And I haven't found it, and when I do, it's going to be an event, and it's going to feel a hell of a lot more satisfying than if my agent does it, you know?
Yeah.
And it'll be like, look, if I programmed an agent to find it and buy it at $50 and have it delivered, and it either the agent sends me a notification that it happened and I approve, or it just shows up because I like a surprise,
Yeah.
which I think is actually a really lucrative service that somebody could set up. Like, imagine, you're a fan of this thing or that thing, and
Yeah.
you have a $50 monthly budget, and something just shows up. you know,
Yeah.
you're going to like it, right? Anyway, as
Yeah.
cool as it is to have the record, I want to get it myself. So,
Yeah.
uh,
And
yeah,
yeah, there's something to be said on like even going and visiting the stores, right? Like
absolutely.
there won't be any of that, and there won't be only
No,
human interaction.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And all the things that happen along the way, because you go in there asking for one thing and you find another.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily something you were expecting to, or it could have been predicted that you would,
Mm,
because that's the thing about algorithmic discoverability is
yeah.
that there's almost zero serendipity,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it doesn't account for changing taste.
That's a very thought-provoking way of thinking about it. Earlier when you were describing it, I was thinking, wow, yeah, you're right. You could have an agent set up so that he could buy tickets for
Yeah,
concerts because
exactly.
there's always these freaking scalpers taking it early, right? But then, yeah, I like the trade-off that you highlighted, that people can you know like really like need to measure and
Hmm.
balance when they're building a product. So yeah, I have to say, like, this has been a really fascinating conversation. I really love the depth that we can go and apply the tetrad and laws of media. For folks, I want to recommend that startups talk to someone like you and really bounce ideas and discover new ways of thinking about things. What's the best way that people can reach out to you?
Oh, sure. That's probably a good thing to know. I actually just finally got a website. Another shout out to my friend Chris Carmichael, Chris Carm.
Nice,
Been
thank you,
friends for
Chris.
you. Yeah, no, Chris finally he built, like, vibe coded a website for me at andrewmcluhan.com.
Mm,
you
nice,
know,
I'll add that.
I've only now just started to get my own identity separate from the McLuhan Institute. So you should be able to book me through there.
Mm,
Me there's a form for consulting and whatever else. This is what I love, thinking about these things and helping uh, other people think more differently and deeply about technology and culture. So would love
yeah,
to chat. You can
yeah.
find me pretty easily.
Yeah, and yeah, it's I know as a someone living in Toronto, Ontario, you're a stone throw away.
Yeah,
So yeah, so maybe even like meet in person is also a possibility. So yeah,
absolutely.
so Andrew, again, thanks for like coming on to the show, and thanks for continuing the work that your grandfather and your father did, and really applying it to like the now, and really so that helps us appreciate what happened before and build for the future. So yeah,
Thanks, Edward.
thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.